Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Brandon Young returns to the show. Again, we've got the return of the in-depth series where we take a look at the entrepreneur and look at all the different difficulties that they had in their lives and what made them into the entrepreneur they are today. Now, the difference with this one is obviously Brandon has been on, but it's been 4 years since he last came on to the show. So what we're going to do with this one is we'll do a quick summarize of 2014, I think, when Brandon started 2014-15, just to summarize up to that point, and then we're going to chronologically look at what all the changes, because there's been so much gone on since then with the software and everything else you've been doing and the size of the company that you've grown. So let's do a quick 2-minute roundup of you up till 2019, and then we'll build 19, 20, 21, 22 into 23.
Sounds good, man. I can't believe it's been 4 years. It's crazy that how I don't know where the time went. Like I think we were locked in the house for 2 years, and then we woke up. Right? We were asleep and woke up, is what it feels like.
Yeah, indeed. So let's do a quick wrap. You started, I'm going to do some of this from memory and you can start filling in the gaps. You started out doing wholesale in 2014-15.
15,
was
yeah.
it was okay for the first part, then it was become too cumbersome to do, obviously. And then you decided to go into private label, which was a fucking mitigated disaster in the year one, but it was about the survival of the fittest because you started off in electronics.
Yeah.
You end up having a lot of stuff that went wonky, went sideways. You had a lot of returns and issues that you had to deal with. You lost a lot of money, and then you switched into the toy category towards the end. Am I on the right track?
Your memory's spot on. Incredible.
Yeah.
Like an elephant.
So that's the beginning part, and you got on your path. And then obviously year two, I think you hit your 7 figures after the loss of year one. So basically you lost quite a lot of money. Then you recouped and then went on to do 7 figures towards the end of year two. Is that correct?
So after year one,
Mm,
so we didn't start until we went to Canton in 2016,
mm,
and we found our first products, launched those a couple months later. And then 12 months after that, we had done $1 million in revenue on the private label side.
yeah.
And like you said, we didn't make any money. We looked at the balance sheet, it was even. Whatever we made, we had spent. Toys and travel were the direction that we went that started to do really well for us. So I would say we started to solve from some of the biggest failures what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
And that was like the aha moment for us, which was, we had some, you may have even had a pair. I don't know if we shipped them international, but the
Mm,
true wireless earbuds we were the first probably 3 sellers on the market
mm,
with those earbuds that everyone has now. We had wireless changing pads before Samsung even released theirs. And then we had noise canceling headphones.
mm,
And so 3 of those disasters we learned a lot of lessons from. And the charging pads, we did really well. We got attacked at some point and sales went south. We didn't know what had happened until later. Jennifer's sitting in a training class in China and they're talking about how to attack competitors. And
mm,
we realized that we were hit with one of those tactics.
yeah.
And then in 20 for the earbuds, the true wireless earbuds, the Bluetooth technology at the time was not quite good enough.
Mm,
So we had a high defect rate, 10, 15%. But the margin was so good that we could give someone an extra pair every single time it was bad, and we would still easily make money on the product. But overall, just super competitive electronics. The sellers there willing to attack you. We had to learn how to defend against that. We decided to start choosing products and answering questions. The 2 biggest products for us that really taught us the biggest lessons were the active noise canceling headphones. That was such a small keyword at the time as far as search volume, and we couldn't rank for all the other keywords that had to do with headphones because you were just dominated by a bunch of $15, $20 items, had really cheap headphones that we couldn't convert against or win. And so we learned that from that one, and then some toys, like some bricks that we were doing that light up into sets. We realized like we really need to know what keywords we're going to be getting our sales through before we choose to do a product. And so we had to work backwards from the keyword research and start really understanding what are the keywords that drive sales, how are the current sellers getting their sales, and can we duplicate that? And once we started asking and then being able to answer those questions, our batting average went way up, and we were off to the races.
Yeah. And then if we quickly fast forward up to 2019, I think you were doing 3 to 5 million there or just above. You'd already started the educational program. At that point, I think you were up to about 400 or 500 students. I'm guessing this is 2019. And one of your goals was to get to 8-figure, or you were close to, you're projecting it out for the further year. So let's say that's wrapped around 2019. Correct me if you're wrong. And then we can pick up from end of 19 to 2020.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out, we were short on the 8 figures in 2020. We hit it between all of our accounts in 2021. We did 12 million. And in 2022, we did 22 million last year. And the goal this year is to do close to 35 million. So yeah, we were 3 to 5 million. Then I think we were just short. So 19, we did 3, and then 6, and then 12, then 22. Yeah. So we haven't grown. We've been growing pretty aggressively. Obviously, our strategy was to find as many products that made sense and then launch them. But we really doubled down on our toy brand since we spoke. I think that when I spoke to you, I said I was really excited about really building out that brand and really making it a real brand. And we've done that. I think that brand alone did 19 million last year of the 22 that we did.
How many products did you put out in that year?
We launched over 100 products last year.
Wow. What's your strike rate? I know you run a school and everything else, and I know you'd have got much, much better with it. It won't be 100%, but what's your strike rate now with product? The last.
Yeah, it actually went down a little bit because of the competitiveness, and we were getting a little bit more aggressive with the products that we would do. We still don't lose money on most products. So 80% of the products we launch, we break even or better.
Yeah.
And we used to reorder at least half of the products. So a second order on at least half the products we launch. It's probably closer to 40% now. And I'd say that's going to be pretty consistent. I think that we kind of really, we've hit this position or place in Amazon where we've gotten really good at building value and testing and content before we choose to do the product. So we basically will validate the product with keyword research, competitor analysis, and then we won't move forward with a product until we know our design and our offer is going to outdo the others.
So you have a 40% failure rate, but it doesn't mean that you'll lose money on them. You just discontinue at the point of break even because it's not worth the cash flow, which is
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because people normally express failure rate as disasters. We lost loads of money, therefore, or the product wouldn't sell and we've got loads of stock. What you're saying is your success rate is 60% based on continuing the product, but within that 40%, often you won't actually lose money. You'll get your money back on them, but they're not worth a continual investment.
Yeah, that's right. About 20% of the time we might lose a little bit because we're aggressive to get our cash back. But sometimes we'll just bleed it out. Like if we're not going to reorder it and it's 4 or 6 months of inventory instead of 2 or 3, we're okay with that. Like we learn from it. We might iterate and change the design and launch a whole new line of those products because from what we learn, right? So everything's about just collecting data and figuring it out.
Because I think that's the thing is I think people are concerned with the failure rate, but I explain to people, you build it in. Because people go, well, how do you build a brand? Well, you keep adding SKUs, you have a great pipeline, you're going to have winners, you're going to have also runs and everything else. How you master it, what I've noticed outside of data for the larger sellers, is that their ability to get something out of the marketplace swiftly at the lowest cost possible in terms of, you know, a product that is considered failure. Instead, you don't get an emotional attachment to it. You know, you churn, you burn it, you get it out of the way, then you move to the next product. So you carry on building and increasing your turnover and hopefully in a lot of cases your profitability on the basis that you've got a great pipeline. You're always in production mode or producing it. There's always something coming out of the pipe, and it's how you mitigate the ones that are losers, basically.
Yeah.
How you do that is really important. If you can manage that very well and offset that against your wins, then that's a great win all round. Because I think the psychology is people avoiding, if they have a failure, they take it personal, their self-esteem goes down, not only just their wallet, their ability to add the confidence to perform and go again can be greatly impacted unless you manage your own psychology.
Yeah, that's right. And we've built these processes out with our team because we're, you know, an advantage that we have is that our team is there in China. So during COVID, people were retracting, they were scared, they didn't know what was going to happen, they couldn't move as fast, the communication channels. China was wide open if you were in China. You couldn't get in if you were on the outside. So our team was going regularly to factories. And so our team grew. We were in China in 2020, right before COVID, you know, hit. We barely got out. I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And we had less than 4 employees. I think it was 3 employees at the time. And now we just went back for the first time since they just reopened, and we've got over 20 employees there and 3 offices. And it's just, we're growing so quickly that when everyone was scared, we decided to double down. We tried to look at the macro of what does all of this mean? What are the trends going to be if these things happen that people say are going to happen? So we knew baby and toys were going to do really well. So that's why we were super aggressive with toys in 2021 or 2021. And it's just worked out really well for us to think about, okay, travel was terrible during 2020, right? No one was traveling. Our travel brands were down 90% or more. And we said, well, when people get the opportunity to start traveling again, we think they're going to do it pretty aggressively. So instead of selling that brand, I had a terrible offer from an aggregator because I was thinking about just focusing 100% on toys. And the multiple they gave me is because they were uncertain. They were scared. I said, well, instead of doing that, let's just grow it. And after launching only a few SKUs, we doubled the size of that business.
Interesting. And what about the coaching side of that you've been coached as a CEO? Because I've heard you mention it a couple of times. We've never personally had a discussion. That's played a pivotal role. You brought in a coach to help you develop as your leadership skills.
So going from 6 to 12 million was probably one of the most painful things we did. That was really hard and stressed us out. We had a couple employees in China. That was 2020. And we were trying to solve how to build a team that could scale. And we realized we just didn't know what we didn't know. And we weren't good at it, a lot of it. We each had our own skill sets. I'm more of a visionary, product development, marketing. Jennifer is more of an operations, side of it. But it sounds like that should be all you need, but it isn't. We just didn't know how to manage, hire, set the proper expectations for employees. So we hired a CEO coach. I'd made a post and I said, does anyone have a good executive coach? And my friend Fernando Campos, who's a very large seller, he sold over $250 million, lifetime on Amazon at this point. But we were in MDS together, and he recommended a company called CEO Coaching International. And so we interviewed from a different coaching company called Scaling Up, which has a great book, and they have the EOS model, I think, with traction. And or EO. They have an organization called EO, that entrepreneurs group. It's really great. So we interviewed a guy from there, and then we interviewed 2 coaches from CEO Coaching International, and we really clicked with one guy out of Miami that has a ton of experience scaling consumer products companies. He was with some of the Fortune 100 companies and basically was in charge of supply chain, innovation, marketing around products. So he basically sat down with us and broke us down and said, okay, had us take personality tests, had us understand what our natural and what our adaptive behaviors are from our professional and personal lives, and then start to understand how to build out an org chart that can scale, how to hire A players, how to set proper expectations, how to work backwards from goals. Everything that we learned from him has helped us to scale now, not just with the other businesses we have. We're up over 60 employees total between the 3 businesses, but the value of our companies have gone maybe from 10 million to over 60 million, simply because of understanding how to scale.
And what was your biggest learnings once you was doing the personality tests and your skill sets? Because we perceive ourselves through our own eyes, right? So we're not 100% self-aware of everything that other people see. We try to be as aware as possible. Did you get any surprises of you're good at this, or this isn't suitable for you? Or did you get any surprises in there? Because you think, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not so good at. But did anything get picked up in there that surprised you?
It wasn't necessarily surprising so much as like just really understanding my weaknesses. And his philosophy is that, and what you hear a lot of people say is, oh, you got to work on your weaknesses, right? Oh, you identify your weaknesses and you work on them. His philosophy is the opposite. It's like you got to take your superpower and you amplify that, and then you supplement your weaknesses with team members and with organization. And so what was great is really understanding what I am good at, and when I'm stressed is when I'm being forced to do things I'm not good at or that I don't enjoy doing. And so I guess the biggest takeaway from really understanding our personalities was, if you take someone on one end of the wheel and then you put them into a job position on the other end of the wheel, you're going to end up with someone that just is stressed out over time. It's never going to last. They're not going to be happy. And so you want employees that are just naturally fit into that position, and then you just want to give them the tools that they can have to succeed.
Let's talk about Data Dive, because that's kind of taken a large chunk of your time now. It's grown a lot. It's got well established now as a brand.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the very early version, which was like a Google Sheets as it started out that early,
Yeah, it was MVP. The MVP was built into Google Sheets. So it's always been interesting because we started out with learning how to do it ourselves and growing our brand and executing over and over again on product development launches and really understanding what's working. And then that's what we were teaching. So I enjoyed helping others, teaching others. That's a passion of mine. And a lot of it had to do with what the noise that was in the space that was just really hurting people. We've talked about that on other calls too.
Yeah.
So what we learn from doing it ourselves, we teach. And then now what Data Dive does is it automates what we teach. Because for years, we would take massive amounts of data. When we first started teaching, we were actually using Seller Labs and Viral Launch. We were exporting 2 different sheets. We were doing a VLOOKUP. We were adding a column, and we were just trying to match search volume, like better search volume with keywords and that sellers were ranked for. So we were kind of doing our own Cerebro. And then Cerebro came out with Helium 10 with the reverse ASIN. And then they expanded to 10 competitors, which gives us that more complete picture. But we would still take a massive sheet from download from Cerebro with 10, the max is 10 competitors. And then we would add a column for relevancy. We would get rid of all the keywords that don't matter. And then we would understand how the sellers are getting their sales. But to really analyze a market, and you've seen it and you know the philosophy and everything. So I'm just trying to describe it for listeners, which is that if you were to take the best seller of a product or a seller of a product and then map out all the keywords that they're on the first page for, you're going to have an incomplete picture of all the keywords that drive sales for that type of product. So the magic happens when you take the top 20 or 30 sellers and you look at all of the keywords they drive sales for, and then you put an entire table together so that you get all of the keywords, not just the ones that any one seller's good on. Now you get a 99% plus picture of all the keywords.
Mhm.
And so we were taking this massive amount of data and kind of doing that ourselves, and then evaluating how good each seller was with other columns and other rows and formulas we would do. So it would take a couple hours really to do this at a deep level. And then Data Dive does it in 60 seconds, right? And better. But we got lucky. In 2020, God, time flies. End of 2019, beginning of 2020, Florin, our CTO, joins Seller Systems to learn how to sell on Amazon. So previously, he was the CEO. He had worked his way up from a programmer to the CEO of the largest development firm in Romania. And then he got a job with a massive PE firm in the United States that buys SaaS companies as, a VP.
Yeah.
And so they would acquire SaaS companies, fire everyone, redo the software, and then run it at a third the burn. That was their business model. So they did over 20 acquisitions while he was there. And then his kid's going to go away to college. His wife looks at him and says, you know what, I'm tired of you working 90 hours a week. I want to do something, let's retire. Let's do something in retirement that we can do together. And so he's like, sure, what do you have in mind? And he quits. And she says, well, I found this guy, Brandon, that teaches people how to sell on Amazon. We can start an Amazon business. So they joined the inner circle, and then he immediately sees this massive, thing that we're doing with data and sheets and all these formulas we're putting in. And as a programmer, a brilliant programmer, he says, this needs to be a software. Like, this can be done so much easier. And I'm a little disappointed because Jennifer had created some macros, but she has 2 master's degrees in computer science. So she probably should have solved this a lot sooner. So we put out for free as a value add to Inner Circle members. He puts out the sheet that does all of these formulas, that does everything so much faster. And it quickly spreads outside because our users start sharing it with VAs who share it with other VAs. And then it gets to MDS because we have MDS members, and then other MDS members are using it. So we actually had a cap at Google of how many people could be using the Google Sheet.
Yeah.
So it quickly took off and gained popularity. And at that time, I started studying SaaS and software and how to run a true software company. And one of the things they always tell you is that you're not really investable until you have what's called product market fit.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, I guess we have product market fit. We have thousands of people using this thing, a month after releasing it. We probably should invest some money and really do this.
And then where did it go from there? Let's chart the history of that, because that is part of the Brandon Young story anyway. So that's been a big part recently, isn't it?
Florin had worked on it a little bit. We had a former employee who was offering services to members in the inner circle around validation and using our methodology. So he starts working with Florin, and then another gentleman, Glenn, got a little bit of chops with Sheets as well, starts working with Florin. And so when I stepped up and said, okay, I want to do this right, I want to do this as a sheet, they had put in a little bit of work. So I gave them a little bit of cash. Glenn still works with us, and made Florin the CTO, gave him some equity. He bought some more equity. And then since then, well, it's over 2 years, we've put in over 2 million of our own dollars into the software in investments beyond what we've taken in revenue. And they built out the listing builder, which really reverse engineers from data the best way to write a listing to maximize rank based on all the things that you've studied with the algorithm and how it looks at and gives you value based on match type and relevancy and how relevancy plays into it. So we value based on relevancy, match type, and then broad search volume to give you how important a keyword is. We call that the ranking juice score. And so unlocking your ranking, the maximum ranking juice would be unlocking the maximum rank potential. So our listing builder is formulaic and quantifiable. It gives you a real score. So we built that out. We built out, the keyword tools, the master keyword list, and then we started working on PPC tools. At that time, we were still in Sheets, and so we scaled up to over 20 programmers to start working on the web app. And so we released into beta, into the inner circle in Q3 of 2021, and then Q1 of 2022 we released the web app out of beta, and we had opened it up to all non-inner circle members. If you remember, when we first launched, it was only open to inner circle members, and then we opened it up to all non-inner circle members, and we've gone now to 2,500 users. We're approaching 2 million in ARR, and we're still building. We're building a ton of new tools. We've got a keyword tracker that's launching this month. We've got new PPC tools that are launching, and we're investing. We're really investing to scale this.
I was going to say, good engineers are not cheap. And I can understand that you've done two. When was it when you hit the point of 2 million? Did your ass start going a bit then? Could the recouping, or you'd already reached the point of revenue?
No, we're still bleeding. So we're still upside down. We're still investing, I don't know, $60,000 to $80,000 a month beyond. Like we're over $60,000 to $80,000 a month more than we take in revenue.
Yeah.
But because we do well with our brands, and because we do well with the coaching side of it, we're able to easily finance that.
No, that's good. So is it okay? I mean, you publicly said this because obviously you went over with Greg and piped into what they're doing over there. But originally you had a lot of integration with Helium 10 for a period of time. And I remember saying to you, like for anything, nothing to do with Helium 10, it could be anyone. When you're part of someone else's ecosystem, you can sometimes be replaced, and you've got to stay ahead of the curve. So there's always that worry of investing in something. It's the same as Amazon. If Amazon sees something that they like in the marketplace, they could build out that for themselves. They don't always, but there is a case for it, right? Yeah. So I know that you worked with Helium 10, much respect, for a period of time, but then there was the move over. You've done a transfer over, like end of season football transfer over to Jungle Scout. Do you want to talk a bit about that and their data and stuff?
Yeah, so for many years, we were using Helium 10 almost exclusively for data, and having my students use it. So even though I wasn't getting credit for it, I was probably one of the largest affiliates for Helium 10. What I would say is, like, their data is great. Like, it's top 2, right? Top 3 maybe. And so it's more than serviceable. And so what we would do is the same way we were doing it ourselves in our own brand is we would log into our Helium 10 account, we would run a Cerebro, we would get the data, and then we would manipulate the data into tables and charts and graphs that made sense, that were, that you could act on, that actually would display what we wanted it to display. So Data Dive just did the same thing. It would basically take over your Helium 10 account. So we were layered on top of Helium 10, and then we would take over your Helium 10 account, run these actions, pull this data, and then give it to you in our software in the way that would help you understand the market or the niche, or what keywords are important and how good the competition is, how bad the competition is, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, etc. For a long time, like, we had an amazing relationship, and it was they would feature me in their podcast. Like, Bradley's a really great friend, even to this day. Like despite like moving away from Helium 10, he and I get along, and I love Bradley. But the desire was to do something that would, like you said, untether us so that we could scale. And we want to go in the direction of business management, project management, PPC, and agency tools. So like enterprise. We understand what large sellers need because we're a large seller. So we understand how to manage teams, how to manage massive amounts of workflow and a lot of projects and a lot of products. And so that's the direction we want Data Dive to go, which is going to be something that can allow someone to go from, 1 million to 50 million or 100 million.
Yeah.
And Helium 10 is not that, right? Like, Helium 10 has its own niche and is great. They have a lot of great tools. A lot of it is initiation and figuring out keywords and black box and the keyword tracker, the things that they were doing. So my proposal to them originally was around maybe tying in an API. Let me get access to your data for my users. I'll pay for it, and then we can continue to co-market, and I will push people to you for tools that I will never build. And so there was a lot of, there were proponents of that in Helium 10's company, and then there were people in Helium 10's company that said that they never wanted that. The exact quote to me from one of the executives was, "We never want a world where Datadive users don't also need a Helium 10 account." And so I was getting mixed signals, but at the same time, I could see that they weren't really interested in doing what we needed to do to untie. And so we started exploring other options for data that we could purchase, that we could vet. And so I think we audited 8 or 9 different major companies that scrape and provide data from Amazon. And Jungle Scout came out by far the best, because Greg Mercer, who was the original founder of Jungle Scout, had a huge investment influx, like a partial exit, but stayed on with the company as an executive and visionary, brilliant guy. And that was a couple years ago. And since that time, he's invested millions of dollars into making the data better. And then he's opened up a whole new section of the company that sells wholesale data called Cobalt. And so we were exploring the Cobalt data. We were exploring data from other sources, and we did 10,000 dives. So we had our team do the same exact dive with Helium 10 and the same exact dive with Jungle Scout. And what we found when we benchmarked the keyword search volume that Amazon gives you through Brand Registry, we found that Jungle Scout was over 20% more in line with Amazon's data. And we were finding over 30% more keywords, because they were going deeper as far as long tail. And so we were finding more routes, which are really important, more ways people are calling products. And we were finding more long tail keywords. And I love long tail keywords. Like, to me, that's building a solid foundation that, you can really build upon, because those long tail keywords tend to convert better. So you raise the overall conversion of the product. It helps you really compete and win. So you can go after those bigger keywords. So I love long tail. So we were able to find.
Do you think also, because Greg was really one of the first to market with it, really, in terms of that realm, and Helium 10 came 18 months to 24 months later. Do you think some of the advantages, 2 years extra of data, could have played a role as well, historic data?
What I think is that when you build a scraper, you basically set limits based on, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? So sure, you can have more complete data, but it's going to cost you a lot more. And then then you need to make a business decision. Is it going to be worth it to my users for me to spend that extra money, and then therefore have to charge them extra as well? And I think what they've decided is to draw the line a little bit lower than Helium 10 does, which is fine. But overall, the data is really close and really good regardless from both of them. It just is slightly better. It's not ideal for us, obviously. Like, now we're paying for this data that our users are using, and previously they were paying for it by having an additional account with Helium 10. So it's cut into our cost.
It's cut into that, but you've acquired more users, I imagine, because then they haven't got to pay for 2 subscriptions. Because
it's an easier onboarding for us, right? For sure. I think that we're able to go into markets where Helium 10 doesn't own the market. We have users all over the world. For example, over almost 300 Australian members in the inner circle. And most of them use ZonGuru because they started with Reliable Education, which I think
is the leader in Australia at the time.
So they're the biggest core, 10,000 plus users, they're members. And Adam, who runs Reliable, or ran Reliable, I think they just shut their doors last month, but he's a part owner in ZonGuru, which is John Tilley's software, is a good friend. And but they would basically steer everyone. So I think their big pitch at the beginning is buy the course and then buy a year of ZonGuru also, right?
Mhm.
So it's tough, like, to enter that market. A lot of those users that we have that are Australian, I'd say over half of them started with Reliable Education and ZonGuru. They didn't want to also have Helium 10 and then Data Dive, whereas
Yeah,
just going straight to Data Dive is easy for them.
yeah, indeed. So where did we see Data Dive going now? Obviously, he's had a splash. He's more renowned. You've got Anthony on the team now. He's out at the conferences. So there's lots of presentations, build a user base. Where do you think the Data Dive's going now in terms of what can you talk about, what's available to talk about in the product roadmap that you can talk about?
Yeah, our go-to-market is so much different because it's like the way that I built seller systems was not by running a bunch of ads and shoving it down your throat. It was through value.
Yeah.
It was people would find me because I was on your podcast. They would find me because I put out a YouTube video. They would find me because I spoke at an event.
Yeah.
And they would be like, well, maybe that guy isn't an idiot and he actually knows what he's doing because he's actually selling. And then they would explore, they would watch a free masterclass, which I always used as a funnel, which was value first.
Yeah.
Watch this no bullshit masterclass. It's a few hours long. It's really intense. It digs into the data. And if you don't understand it, this business probably isn't right for you or might not be right for you.
Yeah.
So I use it as a qualifier. But that also it gains the respect of the viewer because I'm not charging them for that value, but I also go deep enough to let them know that they can be successful because it is doable. It's solved. It's just harder. The same thing is what we want to do with Data Dive, which is we want to lead with value. The strategies that we teach have a huge, very high batting average, like we were talking about earlier in the call. So it's solved. Data Dive can give you that data very quickly. And so we've built into Data Dive the scorecard, the product scorecard, which gives you a quantifiable score about how risky a product is based on 4 different factors. So it's, 14, 18 questions and 4 different factors: competition, the keywords, the ROI, and really understanding, what are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? What's the true opportunity of this product? By then you get a score, and if you research 100 products, maybe 2 are going to be good enough to get samples on. And a lot of people just don't put in that work, but we really teach to do that, right? The cream will bubble to the top, and you're really going to have a much higher chance of success if you do a lot of research, a lot of products. And so we want to lead with teaching people how to use the software to grow their business. And then if they choose to use the software, they choose to then go back to what we used to do with Helium 10 or another method and do a lot of it manually, or try to just sludge through it, or, then they're more than welcome to do that. But if we lead with value that is really going to help people drive success and education, then people are going to be far more likely to sign up for the software and stick around, because we can, and our churn rate is probably the lowest in the industry with regards to software, because of the fact that most of the users are real sellers. I'm not out there pitching to selling a dream and having affiliates that are selling dreams to people that are saying, make $1 million, just buy my course on a credit card for $1,000. Like those scammers that are really good at marketing, really good at putting TikTok content or YouTube content, but they're not real sellers, and then they oversell it. We want to make it real. We want to tell you how hard it is. We want to educate you. That's going to mean that you're far more likely to be successful. If you're serious, you're going to sign up for the software. And then if you're successful, you're going to stay using the software. And so our churn rates are low, and your success means our success. So I like to align the vision and the mission of the company with the mission of, with the best outcome for the user and for the customer, which is your success means our success.
Agreed. So where do you think in terms of where it is now to where you want to get to, give us a percentage? You half the way there to what you originally wanted to execute on? Obviously things will change over time.
Yeah, we're probably 25% of the way there. So PPC is the big hill this year. So you have to do things in certain order when it comes to tools, obviously, and you just have to walk those be very careful to make sure that the foundation you're building the tools on can scale and that it can support the other tools that are going to rely upon it.
Yeah.
So you can't build PPC tools without first having a good dashboard. You can't. And so the first step is we need a dashboard. We need to tie into business reports. We need to see what you're currently doing and what it means to your business and what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Keyword tracker is going to be a direct result of tracking your optimization efforts and your launch efforts using Datadog. So you write your listing using our tool. It's a brand new product. You write your listing using our tool. You turn on a bunch of keywords grouped by roots using our tool. And then now you can track the results. Then you can see how the business and the profitability is doing with the dashboard. The next step is to create PPC tools that can have levers in them that you can easily track with the keyword tracker, the results of which you can track in the keyword tracker and in the dashboard.
Yeah.
So you got to go in order. The next step after that would be further automations. So I like to say, like right now, I like Scale Insights a lot. Like I like the guys, Luke and the guys that have put that together. I'm a huge fan of it. It's probably 60 or 70% of what we want with our version 1.5 or whatever. And so we need to get to that point. Right now, you could push PPC campaigns upstream from data, good keyword data. I don't know any other tools that are really, maybe aside from the Helium 10 tool that ties in with their keyword data, but they don't manipulate the keywords in the way that we do. So I think that we have the biggest advantage there. So the keyword tool is the foundation. Then we upstream it to PPC. And then we can start to set automations based on our knowledge of how to sell on Amazon, which is what is the waterfall and the levers that you need to pull to grow. And this is where you come in as an expert in PPC with your agency and what you do, which is most people look at it backwards. They look at ACoS. They look at the wrong things.
Yeah.
So we feel that we're going to build tools that have a better methodology with a foundation of better keyword research. And then that's kind of our vision. Version 2 will be just as good or better than anything that's on the market. And that'll be 6 months from now. And then version 3, 12 to 18 months from now, we're hoping to get to full self-driving. So full AI, machine learning.
Sounds good. I think one of the biggest problems, and that it'll be, if people could solve it on 2 levels, it can solve a problem, is such as that when the pricing strategy, not all, but a lot of the tools, because of processing power as well, is when you're working off the percentage of ad spend. So if you're an agency who don't build in-house, then you're getting the cost passed downstream from your vendor who you're taking the software from, which you have to pass on to the customer, which has an impact on churn rate. Because it's almost like the more successful you help the client get, the more in percentage you're going to get paid in the cash value. And then what happens as they grow, what will happen is a new CFO comes on board and going, why have we have an increase in paying these people X, Y, and Z? Shall we take it in-house or shall we move somewhere else? So part of it is a punishment for success.
Yeah.
So if I always say to people, if you can work out that metric there, is how do you work out your costs between the processing power that you need without charging a percentage of ad spend, etc. That will have great impact on your churn rate in definitely reducing that.
That's our goal, right?
Yeah.
That's 100% our goal. We're not going to charge based on ad spend. I don't like that model. I think that
no one does.
No. But not only that, right? Understanding PPC at a high level like you do means that you have to understand what the people next to you do, and then the other factors, the dozens or hundreds of factors that actually play into the performance of your PPC, which would be your competition, your images, your SEO, your indexing, the way you wrote your bullets, right? And when we're turning on AI for bullet writing, listing writing, it might already be live, but I don't want to speak out, but it should be this week, maybe next week at the latest. And again, that only is good because it upstreams from good keyword research, good algorithms written to quantifiably give you how good your ranking juice is, right? you need an algorithm and you need good data into a machine for the machine to give you good output.
Yeah.
And the same is true with PPC. If you want to run PPC from a machine, they need to look at hundreds, if not thousands of factors, all of your competition, the price points of your competition, how good your content is, make suggestions on your listing, make suggestions on your content, be able to analyze your images versus your competition's images, which, we're finally, I think we're getting closer to that point. We're not there yet, which is why I think we're probably closer to 12 to 18 months from that.
Yeah.
From a PPC perspective, to do it really at a high level. But it needs to give you a monitor at so many things, and then know that when it pulls one lever, how it impacts 100 other levers. And AI is really dumb at first, so it needs a lot of data, a lot of training. But if you base it off solid data and the input is good, then your output should be good too. And I think that we want to create a PPC tool that is an easy add-on, that has rules that are different and better, that is upstreamed from better keyword research. And so as you scale with it, and the requirement from our end, from a power perspective, like you said, it's only going to scale slightly with that, right? Like, so we're experimenting right now with a credit system because we get users that come in that are power users that just do tons of dives, because maybe they're an agency and all they do is do product research for for their clients. Yeah. Or maybe they are the arm of a large company that's just looking for the next products, and all they do is do keyword research and dives on new potential products and optimization, or they have thousands of SKUs. We lose a ton of money on that if we don't scale with credits and usage. But we also want it to be reasonable, right? It doesn't cost us a fortune. It might be pennies, so we need to be reasonable there. And I think we're going to run the PPC the same exact way. You're going to have a base that is based on the number of SKUs, and then you're going to scale up from there.
Yeah, it's sensible and it's in line. But yeah, I think once the punishable aspect of ad spend, I think it does. I speak to people, and obviously we've been building our tech since 2018, but we're not a software company, so we have the advantage that we can control that cost. Whereas a software company, the goal is to scale. You need volume to make it work, and with the volume comes processing power. With the processing power comes cost. So it's very difficult to manage that, whether it's a tier system, no matter. It's always going to be difficult as people see their costs rise. Even if they're successful, amnesia kicks in, right? So it was okay before when it wasn't costing so much, but it's costing more now, and we have to look at it. So you have to build that in and factor that in, because churn rate as a software company or an agency or anything is going to be very important. Some people build out sales teams and don't really care because they've always got sales on the front end, but it's much better to keep a customer, the same customer, and market to the same customer than it is to keep trying acquiring new customers.
What they call that in the SaaS world is that you have a leaky bucket.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies solve it by just pouring more water into the bucket, and then but the right way to solve it is to fill the holes, right? So that stops
solve it at source. Yeah, because all what's going to happen, you keep filling the bucket up, you just piss more people off. Good news travels 10 times less versus bad news. And so the goal is to always fix the problem at source, not put a Band-Aid on it. But I think it's quite a difficult one to manage, especially as more processing power, more and more needed when you start thinking about AI, etc. I'm not a programmer, but yourself, when you're dealing with huge amounts of data, there's going to be a cost offset. And the larger and larger the data becomes, that's got to be chewed in, spat out to provide eloquent results in order to run the business on, then that's going to take much more brain power, and therefore it's more cost.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the challenges that we face, which is, we want to do some pretty cool things. Like we basically built Trello or Monday or Asana with the project management, team management tools into Datadive. And we felt that was important because we've got agency tools that we're building. This opens us up. We noticed that the enterprise users are going to churn the lowest, right? Yeah. They're going to have the most seats. They're going to use us the most effectively. And so we want to build tools that empower them to continue to
Yeah.
stay with us and to grow with us. And we understand as someone, that we've gone, 20 plus employees, and we're looking at 1,000 or more products a year.
Mm.
If you're just putting those research sheets for those products into a Google Drive or some random folder, good luck ever finding one when you need to find it, right?
Yeah.
You need to be able to tag it. You need to be able to put it in the right bucket, in the right, the right space. You need to make sure it's assigned the right way. And then that way you can go back to it later. And you need to be able to make sure that you're not duplicating work later, because it's very easy when you're on, product number 673 that you're looking at. You may have looked at it twice before and not even remember, or it's a different team member duplicating work and wasting time.
Yeah. And I was going to say, going back to enterprise, generally in the main, enterprise normally means corporate, generally the buyers, not always. But if you think Salesforce and stuff like that, enterprise normally has a lot longer sales cycle to close. But even though when we talk at enterprise in terms of your software, and if they're Amazon sellers, it does away with that corporate structure anyway. It's really going to be, can they afford to sit in that monetary bracket to pay for a software enterprise? So I think enterprise would work with inside of our community, but enterprise normally in a corporate world would take longer to close those sales cycles.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. We want to make the onboarding painless. If you bring on Salesforce, or one of these big SaaS companies, or like just any big ERP system that you're looking to switch over to, it's painful. There's packages where it's going to cost you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in a year of your time to really get everyone switched over.
Yeah.
So the coaching program is like Seller Systems is super fun for us, and super intriguing. There's a lack of education for employees in the space, and we want to solve that. So the goal, like right now, Seller Systems has education for every aspect of selling. So we have a lot of companies that put their employees into the inner circle. Even if they're only doing one portion of that job and only 20% or 30% of the content is right for them, they're still buying the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's not as focused, and we don't know whether they're consuming it and understanding it at a high level. So the goal would be that we can open up Seller Systems, and we've started to do this because we're re-releasing all of our content, and we're basically putting it into buckets that are going to make it much easier for us to just hand to a specific job title or job position, job description. And so we want to become the industry standard when it comes to certification. We've consulted, and we're bringing on expert in education programming, testing partners that are good at constructing these tests based on the data. But it'll be something where someone comes in for a 12 to 16 week college level program, has multiple quizzes along the way and different modules that they must pass, has a final exam that they must pass, and then has a final oral exam to really be able to convey at a deep level that they understand the concepts and they understand how to execute on it. And then we can give them their certificate.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a need for 20 to 40,000 people in the space, like good employees, between agencies, aggregators, management companies, and then just brands that want to scale. Like our users, there's a lot of people that want, like our other members, that need to hire qualified people to help them alleviate one position or start to fill out those seats in the org chart.
Yeah.
And so we feel like there's a huge opportunity for us to really grow Seller Systems into more of this university and segment entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, enterprise executives, and then also on the business training side, like we did with Camp Ecom, we had business management training. And then all the way down to a granular seat or a job position or job title.
Yeah.
So over the next year, I hope to transform Seller Systems into that. We have a huge renewal rate. Like most of our users, more than 60% of Inner Circle members renew. every year, which I think is a testament to the methodology and then the support that you get and the abundance mentality of the other members. But you can't go from 1,200 members, 1,300 members where we're at to 5,000 members and expect that to stay the same.
No.
So we've got to adapt what we offer, the value that we drive, the way that we allow members to interact and and get the value that they have that we can provide and the content in a way that scales with them and then still provides a very high level of support. So we've got mini masterminds that we have been putting people into based on their region, sales experience, weaknesses, and strengths, where we manually match them. And masterminds are tough, man, because like they're self-driven. And the same thing as entrepreneurs are self-driven. Some people are going to do the work and some people are not.
Yeah.
So some of the masterminds fail and some are great. Sometimes you got 5 people you put together and only 3 stick around. So you got to fill those seats. So we're going to create more of a guided mini mastermind moving forward that we've already started to lay out as well. And we're going to start segmenting on size. Again, business management is going to be one entire new track for seller systems, where we're talking to executives and large sellers. So you're doing $3 or $5 million and you're facing the same problems that Jennifer and I faced in 2019 when we hired the CEO coach. Then that's going to be where we can teach you how to do what we did, which is scale to 10 and 50 million.
Yeah.
Who to hire, how to hire them, how to train them, how to work backwards, what are the leading activities and all that good stuff. And then, so Seller Systems is going to turn into more of a university and education platform and segmented more with college level degrees. And Data Dive, we see moving more into the marketing side and really being able to provide value from a profitability standpoint. So becomes a fintech, integrates with QuickBooks Zero. The dashboards should be just as good or better than anything on the market, keyword tracking and PPC tools. And then on the brand side, our goal is to launch a couple new brands this year and to scale that from 35 million by the end of this year to 50 or 75 million over the next couple years.
So what does an average day look like for you now? Obviously, over the years, it's changed from just selling full time, right? So you and Jennifer in the trenches, and then obviously you've had the education department, and now with the software. What does an average day look like for you?
I enjoy being in the brands business and on the product development side. And so when we were just in China a few weeks, for the last few weeks, we just got back last week. We spent a lot of time visiting factories and then visiting those showrooms that I love in Shantou, which is where you can browse 1,000 factories in one building, right? And so you get to touch and feel the quality of the toys that they're making, and you can see whether they actually know what they're doing. Because the way it works in China is that you've got one guy that creates a good mold and good design, and then you'll have 10 copycats right away. But the way that they execute the mold will be slightly off. It's not going to fit flush. It's not going to feel the same. They're going to use a cheaper plastic. It's not going to have the same look and feel, but you don't know that until you pick it up, until you put it in your hand. So it's great to get back there. But I love that part of it. I love the product development. And I'd kind of gotten away from that. I'd gotten, focusing on being an executive and learning how to do SaaS. I think that I need to stay in the business. So I love that product development side. And I've started to use AI to do that. So I'm prompting Midjourney and I'm training ChatGPT at this point, because I think that might be really good to prompt Midjourney, but I'm getting really good at writing prompts to design new products. And I think that anyone that's not doing that is going to fall way behind really fast, because most of the conversations I was having with the factories when I was visiting them was about customization, cost of customization. And if I can have AI spit out 10 new designs for a potential product, and I can have PickFu or some service similar to PickFu do those polls within an hour, to let me know which of those designs is the best. And then I can compare those to the current bestsellers. And then I have something that's beating the current bestsellers from a design standpoint. I can have a factory that's pumping that out in the next 30 days.
Yeah.
And I've got, things are going to evolve so fast in every single market on Amazon. Anyone with a current bestseller should be scared. You should be super, super scared that people are coming with a better design that's going to convert better, that people are going to love. Those updated designs that are just going to be more in line with and convert better, get better click-through. And so that's what we want to do. We want to go fast. We want to, and we're going to disrupt the toy space even more than we are. I think we're up to maybe a top 10 toy brand on Amazon at this point. Wow. But I think we can really double or triple the toy brand. Plus, I want to enter a couple new markets, like I said, this year. But I love I love like prompting and taking my vision and having the computer spit back something that's awesome, and then to quickly turn that into a real product. So I'm going to split the answer to your question. I think a couple hours a day on the brands, probably another 6 or so hours on seller systems, and then another 3 or 4 hours on Data Dive every day.
And that's how many days a week you at it? 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, or do you take time out?
I get a little bit of time off when we've got Aiden. And but yeah, for the most part, I mean, we're probably putting in 75, 80 hours a week.
Wow. Well, that's your in-depth part 2. There's a lot has changed in the last 4 years. So congratulations on all your success that you've continued with, and obviously going into the future. What's the best way that people can reach you?
So for Seller Systems, free masterclass, join the inner circle. It's sellersystems.com. We finally got rid of the dash and bought the domain without the dash in it.
Guys, thank you for joining us today. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Sharon will be back up next week. I'll be back soon. Take care.